welcome to the Bible class of Jews for Jesus with Bob Mendelsohn.
Okay, everyone, tonight we're going to bite off a lot. We're going to chew on Exodus 35, 36, and 37 because we've already read this. You're going to look at this and say, gosh, it sounds familiar. So we're going to look at these passages not comprehensively, but as a reminder of what we've already viewed. And we're going to look at the actual construction of the tabernacle itself and see if we can see some patterns for us. Chapter 35. Moses assembled all the congregation of the sons of Israel and said to them, "These are the things that the Lord has commanded you to do." He starts with Shabbat and how to keep it. And then he says, bring an offering and let's build a tabernacle. You think, that's kind of interesting. If I were running the show, I would say, I want to build a building. Let's let that be the center of things. And then here's some things to do. But before he even says, let's build a building, he says, remember, when we start building, take a day off. I'm not going to be a slave taskmaster. You guys aren't going to be taskmasters. You were under taskmasters for hundreds of years. I want you to get a better perspective on life, on work, on rest. And so as we enter into this new realm where we're going to carry this pop-up tent, you can see it here, and for those online, apologies. We might have some of these photos. I think I might be able to do that for you online. We'll put some photos up as a link at Exodus 35, 6, and 7. Yeah, we'll do that for you. So you can follow along with some PDFs. When he says, I want you to build this thing, he's already called Bezalel, and who's the other guy? Oholiab. And they're going to be master craftsmen, and they're going to get all these fellows to work for them. It's all going to happen pretty quickly, but remember, take a day off. The principle of God is seen so clearly here. And you might think about it in terms of Genesis, when God created the world, 6 days, and then the seventh day. He didn't call it Shabbat until the book of Exodus. But it was the seventh day, and it was a day of rest. And then he got into the programs of humanity. I think that's significant. He did the same here when he says, let's build this Mishkan, let's build this thing. By the way, you're going to take a day off, and you're not even going to kindle fires on it. Well, it doesn't list all the codes. So yes, it's a principle that is predating tabernacle or later temple or church or whatever people use for their worship center. Therefore, if you're not near a worship center, you still take Shabbat. That's the idea. God says these are the things the Lord has commanded you to do. I mean, Moses is clear that these aren't options, these aren't suggestions, these are commandments. They are ordinances, they're from heaven, they're not from Moses. He is really dropping the God card in front of them and saying, you want to argue with me? You're not arguing with me. You're arguing with the big man. So then he says, take these things, take them seriously. Here's Sabbath, complete rest. Don't kindle a fire in any of your dwellings. So before we even have a building, we have our homes. So religion has to work at home or it doesn't work. Verse 3, you shall not kindle a fire in any of, or really Hebrew, b'chol moshvotechem, your houses. So I guess in English we'd say, don't do it in any of your dwellings, but really it's in all of your dwellings.
What about the light in the tabernacle? It's going to be kindled.
No, it's not kindled. It was kindled once, and it was maintained. Oil and trimmed the wicks.
How often would they trim the wicks?
Daily, twice.
On Shabbat?
Twice on Shabbat. They'd have to do that.
It's not forbidden?
No, remember, work is a funny thing because the workers, priests who are here in the tabernacle, are working on Shabbat. They're doing stuff. And so when is their Shabbat? Well, it's in all your dwellings, so there's got to be something for this guy, something for that guy that's a little different. There's a variety within it. Verse 4, Moses spoke to all the congregation of the sons of Israel and said, this is the thing the Lord has commanded. Take from among y'all trumah, a contribution to the Lord. Whoever is of a willing heart, let him bring it in. So contributions are not, though mandated, they are still from hearts that want to give. The Hebrew nadiv, generous, noble, and willing. And he tells us what to bring. Verse 5, gold, silver, bronze, blue, purple, scarlet, fine linen, goat's hair, ram skins, porpoise skins, acacia wood, oil for lighting, spices for the anointing oil, fragrant incense, onyx stones, setting stones, ephod. So the whole lot. I want everything brought, and people did it. You just can't miss that. Verse 10, let every skillful man among you come and make all that the Lord has commanded. So listen to that in verse 10. Chol chacham lev, all of those who are wise in heart, we say skillful man. Let them come. So here you are, you're Joe Ordinary Jewish guy. You're from one of these tribes. You see how the 12 tribes are laid around? To the north, we've got Dan, Asher, and Naphtali. To the south, we've got Reuben, Gad, and Shimon. To the east, Zebulun, Issachar, and Yehudah. And over here to the west, we've got Binyamin, Manasseh, and Ephraim. So those are the 12 tribes that lay out that way generally during their marches in the wilderness wanderings.
And the Aaronites are on the north.
The Aaronites are up there. Moses and Aaron and all the Aaronites are up there, the priests. They were walking towards Jerusalem even then. So God calls everybody to bring what they can. And here's a principle that you want to live by. Look, every one of us has different gifts, different talents, different hobbies, different likes, different capacities. Jane does things that Jerry can't. Jerry does things that Alvaro can't. We all have different strengths and certainly weaknesses. Let every man do what he can, not what he can't. So you don't get down on someone because they don't do what they can't do. You say, hey, you do that well. Why don't you keep doing that? And we do what we're supposed to do in the kingdom. That's a principle that God was using here. Let every skillful man among you come. So if you didn't have a skill, you weren't invited to the tabernacle to build anything. You might have been there to help schlep stuff. Here, let me haul some acacia wood. But you weren't invited to hammer. Right? The tabernacle, its tent, its covering, its hooks, its boards, bars, pillars, sockets. I mean, all these things that are listed that we ran across several chapters ago. The tables, poles, utensils, the bread of the presence. So the first thing is the tabernacle itself, in verse 11, the Mishkan. And what is the root word of Mishkan? Shachan, which is what? The glory. Shekhinah. You're right. The Shekhinah is the presence of the God who dwells with us. Shachan is to dwell. So a Mishkan is a place where he dwells. So build me a place that I might dwell there. Okay. So the first thing I want you to build, verse 11, is the tabernacle, and then all the stuff. So the tabernacle is this entire this entire picture with, this is the entryway, and all those 20 boards this way, and they're tied down just like you would with a tent today, with tent pegs and such. They're tied down here, and they're 10 cubits high and 1.5 cubits wide. I mean, everything's got precision all the way around there. And there's this cover here, and on top of the whole unit is this goat hair cover that I can't draw. Okay? On top of everything. Here's the altar, here's the laver, and they're inside the first veil. And then there's another veil right here that segregates the outer court from the inner court. And in the inner court you see the menorah, the table of showbread, that's right. And this is the altar of incense. And then there's another veil that kind of blocks this area, so that the back area is 1/2 of the size of this front area. So this is the holy place, and this back here is the Holy of Holies. And in there is just one thing, the ark. In the ark are several things. Well, that's it. Now, Gershon, Kahat, and Merari were the 3 sons of Levi, and their kids kind of laid out that way, but they just laid them out there. I don't know why they assigned them as, we would say, east, north, west, and south or something. These were the children of the Levites who were in those sections. Remember, they didn't have, when they entered the promised land, they didn't have their own portion of land. So the Aaronites are distinct, and then Kahat, Merari, and Gershon were here, the families of Levi. Anyway, it's kind of neat to see it from above. The principle seems to be, don't be permanent in your establishment of the religion. because I'm going to keep moving and keep welcoming and keep generating new stuff. I'm going to keep doing. A point in time like this with Moses and what Moses asked the people to do and the people did, to argue from that moment, which was a one-off activity, and say that is the permanent institution of Hashem, is, I think, not a normal biblical way to interpret things. I think that's dangerous when you make the descriptive prescriptive. Have you heard that phrase before? When you make the descriptive, what God did at that moment with those people, with Habakkuk or with Haggai, with Jonah. I mean, we saw that with Jonah when he was supposed to go and tell the Ninevites, you're dead meat, and they repented, and that was good. And the next prophet who came said, you don't have another chance. And they were gone. So the descriptive can't become prescriptive. The one-off or the timely can't become the all-timely, ever-timely. You just got to be careful. So he said, build the Mishkan, verse 11, the tents, its covering, its hooks, its boards, its bars, its pillars, its sockets. I mean, there was such an elaborate connecting that they did with here. It's pretty remarkable. And again, the books there, The Tabernacle by Levi, is really good on this, with all the details, if you want. The ark, its poles, the mercy seat, verse 12. Now, there's a problem, because it doesn't say mercy seat. Aaron, the ark, and the Badav, the poles. And then this other word, et hakaporet, the atonement cover. So it doesn't use the word for mercy. And as a result, you say, well, wait a minute, why did they call it that? They called it that because that's what they called it. So for generations it was called the mercy seat because there God was merciful to people. But really it should be called the atonement cover. And that's what the NIV calls it. A rare moment where I give nod to the NIV. But they got it right. The curtain of the screen, the table, its poles, utensils, and verse 13, the lechem hapanim, bread of the presence. So that's what's going to go up on here. Now, you don't have to build the bread of the presence, you bake that. It's kind of funny that that got slipped in. But then he puts in other things, in other words, ingredients. Verse 14, lampstand, utensils, lamps, and oil for the light. You don't build that. But in other words, everybody bring everything you got. We got woven garments for ministering. We got the holy garment. We got everything. And verse 19, the operative phrase, a very important phrase to understand the role that we're going to have, lechahem, to minister as priests, to act as priests, to priest the people. So, everybody left, verse 20, and everyone whose heart stirred him, and everyone whose spirit moved him. By the way, the word stirred is nasa, to lift him. And everyone whose spirit moved him came and brought the Lord's contribution, that's the terumah, for the work of the tent of meeting and for all its service and for all the holy garments. So everybody brought it. It was great. Can you imagine? I don't have to imagine. We've been in this store for 9 months. And we asked people back when we started in March, could you please send us $42 a month, either on top of what you're giving or initially, to get us through, because we're not going to make it financially because of the double the cost, etc., all the things, the moving costs and all these things. And people did it, and they've kept going and kept doing it, and we're still liquid. It's not like we sell enough to make it just yet. I think it'll be another couple years before we break even. I think the coffee will help. But that's okay. We built that into the $42 a month, and people are doing it. How generous is that? And I got my idea from Moses, who said, tell the people what you need. Let them raise an offering. And they did it. And they're doing it. In other words, you don't have to make a big deal. You don't have to say it every month. You don't have to say it every church service. We've got to give. We're going under. We're not going under. So everybody, verse 22, moved them, both men and women came and brought brooches. That's not brochures. And earrings and rings and bracelets and gold. And every man brought an offering of gold. Everybody. Blue, purple, scarlet, the whole lot. And they brought the terumah. All the skilled women began spinning with their hands, verse 25, brought what they'd spun. It was like a massive flow towards this central place. They brought onyx stones, verse 27, verse 28, spice and oil for the light, and the anointing oil, and the fragrant incense. We looked at that a few weeks ago. And Moses turned to the sons of Israel, and he said, verse 30, the Lord is called Bezalel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur of the tribe of Judah, and filled him with the Spirit of God and wisdom, understanding, knowledge, and craftsmanship. He's got it all. And he's filled him with the Spirit of God and wisdom, understanding, knowledge, and craftsmanship to make designs for working in gold. in silver and bronze, cutting of stone, settings, carving of wood, to perform every inventive work.
Question, the gold that you're talking about in verse 22, would that have been of the righteous people who weren't silly enough to build the calf?
The calf couldn't have been used again because, remember, Moses made the people drink it. After he smashed it, he made the people drink the golden calf. However, not everybody brought wrong stuff, so these are, as you say, the righteous Jews who didn't bring the gold for the calf but still had it. And luckily they did, so that we could use it for all these things. And he put him in his heart to teach, both he and, verse 34, Oholiab, who's from the tribe of Dan. He filled them with skill to perform every work, as a weaver performed. So everything. Chapter 36 begins now. Bezalel and Oholiab, and every skillful person knew what to do, performed it in accordance with all the Lord had commanded. So that's it. It's all happening. Everybody's bringing all the resources. All this anticipation is finally happening. The instructions were given. Verse 2, chapter 36, Moses called these two fellows and every skillful person in whom the Lord had put skill, everyone whose heart stirred him, to come to the work to perform it. So they got all the contributions, and they were still bringing stuff, and he said, really, they're bringing too much. So Moses in verse 6 said, enough already. Let no man or woman any longer perform work for the contributions of the sanctuary. So the people were restrained from bringing any more. We got enough. I didn't ask for $47 a month. I asked for $42 a month. And as soon as everybody would give me more, I'd start sending money to Israel or to our work in Paris or our work in Russia. And look, if we have an abundance, so be it. Let's do that. 4 verse 7, the material they had was sufficient and more than enough. That is a great feeling. Can you imagine if the place where you worship, they said, look, we're not going to take up an offering for the next 4 months because we got enough already. How great would that be? You'd be free to go give to other things if you wanted to continue to be generous. So everybody came. They started making the tabernacle with 10 curtains, verse 8, twisted linen, blue, purple, scarlet, cherubim. Bezalel made them. And they've got the specifics, just like we were told earlier. The length, verse 9, of each curtain was 28 cubits. The width was 4 cubits. All the curtains had the exact same measurement. So these are the curtains that they're going to draw all the way along here on the sides, and they're going to lay it on top. But these are the curtains that are kind of drawn together. And he made how many loops of blue, and he put them on these curtains and these loops. All the specifics are fascinating if you want the precision of the Bible. Verse 14, he made curtains of goat's hair for a tent over the tabernacle. 11 curtains in all, which is a very odd number. Not that it's odd, though it is, but it's odd because I don't know anything else in the Scripture that has 11. The balance of the tabernacle is so simple, and then 11 curtains. But he's got 5 on one side and 6 on the other. Kind of odd. But one draped over the front, one draped over the top. It would lay over the top of this building. See, this is an individual building. So he'd lay it over that and then over the top from this side. So it probably was like, if you will, a flap. That was the 11th. Simple, but it doesn't stand out necessarily. So he made the boards, verse 20, of acacia wood standing upright, 10 cubits, the length of each board, 1.5 cubits, the width of each board. There were 10 tenons for each board fitted to one another. So he's got these brackets all along here. He's got these poles. He's got these pegs. Everything is designed so it pops up quickly and sturdily. Nothing's going to blow it down. Have you been in a desert? Have you experienced the wind in a desert? Have you been in the bush in Australia? Have you been beyond the black stump? You go along the coastline and it's blowy, but go into the middle, and when a hot wind comes, you better be bolted down there or you're going to fly away. And that's what they were doing with all this stuff to make sure that it's not going anywhere. Very clever system here. Verse 31, they made bars of acacia wood, 5 for the boards on one side, 5 bars for the boards on the other side, 5 bars for the rear side to the west. He made the middle bar to pass through in the center of the boards from end to end. The precision, you just can't miss the precision. We're not going to reconstruct it. I'm not going to get bogged down in the details. Just know that everything was done the right way. If you negotiated with any of it, the whole thing would not work. If you said, we got 19 on this side, let's make it 19. We ran out of wood. Johnny ran off and used it in his sukkah. He had a school project. We'll just have 20 on one side. We'll keep 19 over here. That thing would not stay sturdy. It'd fall over. And you think, oh, it's not going to fall. No, it would have fallen over. I mean, this is a design of architectural genius, and God knew what he was doing. And he's got the colors of blue, verse 35, and purple and scarlet and fine twisted linen. And so all these women are sewing. The men, the Schneiders, are working. Okay, it's all getting done. 5 pillars, verse 38, overlaid their tops and their bands with gold. Their 5 sockets were made of bronze. Chapter 37, now Bezalel made the ark of acacia wood, which is in the basement of the State Department in Washington, D.C., because we know that from Raiders of the Lost Ark. Thank God for Indiana. The ark is 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits tall. This is what it looks like. And remember, it's wood, but it's covered over with gold inside and out. Gold inside and out. This isn't platinum, which is the heavy gold, but this is still gold, so it's pretty heavy. And then the rings on it, and the rings on the other side, and poles also covered with gold to carry it. And on top is the mercy seat, which we know is the atonement cover, 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide. Verse 7, 2 cherubim of gold he made of hammered work at the 2 ends of the mercy seat. And it's a protection, and God somehow sat in the middle of that and performed transactions with us, with the high priest, once a year. And then he made, verse 10, the table of acacia wood, 2 cubits long, cubit wide, and 1.5 high, covered over with gold molding for it, made a rim, 4 gold rings, closed by the rim were the rings. He made the poles to carry the table. So when you think about it, there's nothing really significant about a wooden table. And the gold amplifies it and makes it significant, makes it beautiful. At the end of the day, it's just a table. Verse 17, he made the lampstand of pure gold. This is not pure. The lampstand of hammered work, base, shaft, cups, bulbs, flowers, one piece. So each of these, one piece. Can you imagine? How clever is that to do that? We call it the 12 tribes lampstand. 6 branches, 3 to the one side, 3 to the other. 3 cups like almond blossoms. You saw that. And there were 4 cups shaped like almond blossoms. And verse 21 of 37, a bulb under the first pair, a bulb under the second pair, etc. So very clever. He made it 7 lamps with its snuffers and its trays of pure gold. He made it and all its utensils from a talent. That's a specific amount of pure gold. And then he made the altar of incense. Doesn't this look like if it were sideways, like the altar? But it's vertical. They all look like they could be about the same if they just turned them another way or added another item. Just turn it a little bit. So this is the altar of incense. In verse 25, he made it of acacia wood, cubit long, cubit wide, square, 2 cubits high, horns 1 piece. Verse 26, he overlaid it with pure gold. There it is again. All this gold is making this one very rich tent. So these are the things that would be used. This is certainly, they made verse 29, the holy anointing oil and the pure fragrant incense of spices, the work of a perfumer, and that was going on inside. You always had to carry the things, so you always had to have poles, because this was a traveling pop-up tent. Can't make it permanent. And the poles were also acacia wood covered with gold. Later on we see some significance to all this, and I'll just give you a hint of it in this quick diagram, and we'll finish it next week with the details. I want you to see that out here, here, and in here are 3 divisions of the tabernacle. The outer court is this red one. The inner court has 2, the holy place we've seen, and the holy of holies. And they all have a veil in front of them. Of course, they're all wrapped with one, and they're all covered with the goat's skin. Nice. But the outer court, which would be where you and I could go, I don't know that they'd let women there, but men could go there, was the altar, where you'd kill the animals, and the laver, where the priest would wash up. That's it. And there's dirt all around here. Then there's another veil, and inside there is the holy place. What's another word for holy place? Sanctuary. Sanctus. Holy. The holy place. So the holy place in here has these 3 items. The menorah, the altar of incense, and the table of showbread. Things we saw. That's the holy place. And who goes in there? Only the priests. I can't go in there. And then inside the next veil, the Holy of Holies, or what some have called the holiest of all. Only the high priest could go, and what day could he go in? On Yom Kippur, the only day of the year. So the rest of the year, it's just you haul this thing and you don't use it for 359 days. By the way, this altar of incense goes into the holy place on that same day. You'll see it listed in the book of Hebrews being in the Holy of Holies. And yet here and throughout Leviticus, throughout everything, it's always in the sanctuary. One day a year it goes inside. So I've always learned it this way, and I get this from Derek Prince, and I get this from Watchman Nee, who write much about this very topic, and that is that these represent the body, the soul, and the spirit. That we are tripartite people. And in the body we have altars and labors. You wash your hands, you do sacrifices, you do external stuff. That makes sense. They would say the five senses, the externals. The holy place, what we call the soul, has these three items. They have the menorah, the table of the bread, and what's the third? The incense. And so these three represent, well, they're light, will, intellect, and emotions. So the incense is the emotional part of our soul. The menorah is the intelligent part of our soul. Light is knowledge. And the table of showbread is the will of man. So will, intellect, and emotions are what goes on in the soul. In the spirit realm, and maybe I should wait and do this next week, but I'll just give you the highlight. We'll look at it again in details. There it is, the Ark of the Covenant. And inside the Ark of the Covenant, which is the only piece of furniture in the Holy of Holies, are three things. We've got a golden jar of manna, we have the Ten Commandments, and we have a stick. Aaron's rod that budded. So these guys, Prince and Nee, and many others, say that these represent, see how the manna is similar to the table of showbread, that this represents intuition, communion, I'm going to give you all three, and revelation. And revelation is, if you will, there. Communion, obviously, the manna, and intuition is better than just tablets of stone. So you get this idea of an inner being that's deeper than will, intellect, and emotions. We've got a spirit in which we live that has intuition. That is, I just know things and I've never studied it. I just know that the Lord wants me to. I feel I'm led by the Spirit, that kind of thing. So these are in the spirit realm, or the Holy of Holies area. So the intuition and revelation, because of the attestation of Aaron's rod, that whole story of the guys arguing and yelling about Aaron's just the same as us, and bring me your stick, and bring me your stick, and Aaron's stick, and Aaron's rod budded overnight, and everybody else's just was a stick. So it was a revelation of who he was. Anyway, you get these three elements of the spirit realm. Our deepest communion with God is not merely intellectual. It's deep, and we have real relationship with Him. These are spirit-level conversations that I think we'll go into in depth next week when we cover the Ark. And I don't think we're going to finish, but we'll try.
You've been listening to the Bible class of Jews for Jesus in Australia. For more information, contact Jews for Jesus, Post Office Box 925, Sydney, Australia 2001. God bless you.